Okay, so these slides accompany Chapter 12 of Living Ethics. Some things to think about are the Sorites paradox and personhood. The personhood video is basically a must-see. It's one of those that's so important that I think the next time I teach this class face-to-face, that's the very first video I will show to my class. It's really important to understand the difference between being a human and being a person. So make sure that you have that distinction clear. All right, so just like all the chapters in this section, we start with just the facts. So what is an abortion? It's the deliberate termination of a pregnancy. Depending on the point at which an abortion is performed, the procedure will result in the death of a zygote, an embryo, or a fetus. At about 1 month, the embryo is smaller than a grain of rice. At 2 months, it is about 1 inch long and has developed limbs and has a heartbeat. At 3 months, all of the healthy fetus's organs are present, and it is 4 inches long and it weighs about 1 ounce. Viability is the point at which a fetus can survive outside the mother's womb. 20 weeks is the absolute earliest, but most will die, and those who survive will have severe impairments. They cannot feel pain until, I don't know, I think it's after that point. You'll have to look that up in the text. Different kinds of abortions. There are surgical or medical abortions. A surgical abortion, which involves inserting a thin plastic tube into the woman's uterus and suctioning the embryo or fetus out of the uterine lining with a vacuum pump, is different than a medical abortion, which involves taking a prescribed drug or a mix of drugs which will expel the embryo or fetus from the uterus. They're both safe. They're outpatient visits, and there's local or no anesthesia involved. The risk of dying from a medically supervised abortion is about 1 in 100,000, or less than 1 in 100,000. The risk of dying from giving birth is 1 in 7,000. Here are some stats from Guttmacher. 24% of U.S. women will have an abortion by age 45. 38% of women 13 to 44 live in a state supportive of abortion rights. I don't know if that's true anymore, based on recent developments. So somebody fact check Russ Schaefer-Landau on that one. 59% of women obtaining abortions are mothers. All right, let's talk about some arguments. The argument from humanity says, if the fetus is an innocent human being, then abortion is always or perhaps almost always immoral. The fetus is an innocent human being, therefore abortion is always or perhaps almost always immoral. So the second premise says the fetus is an innocent human being. Support for that: human fetuses are human and they are living beings. Fetuses are not moral agents, so they are innocent. And support for premise 1 says it's wrong to deliberately kill innocent human beings. But there are problems with this argument. Human being is ambiguous. Now, you might mean a being that has human DNA, is a member of the species of humans, but then premise 1 is problematic because it begs the question. And remember, we don't want to do that. That's a fallacy. There's also the psychological account, which says that a being that is rational, self-aware, possessed of emotions, able to reflect on the value of their experiences, and is capable of sophisticated communication is what we mean when we say human. What we really are describing there is a person. So if that's the case of what it means to be human, then premise 2 seems false, because you can be a member of the human race and not be a person by that definition. So even babies, people in comas, people with severe cognitive disabilities would not adhere to the psychological account there. The argument from potential says if the fetus has the potential to be a person, then it has the same moral status as a person. And most fetuses have the potential to be a person. Therefore, most fetuses have the same moral status as a person. A person's moral status includes having a broad set of fundamental rights, including the right to life. Therefore, most fetuses have a broad set of fundamental rights, including the right to life. If a fetus has the right to life, then aborting it is immoral. Therefore, in most cases, abortion is immoral. That's the argument. So the argument hinges on premises 1 and 6. Premise 6 says if a fetus has a right to life, then aborting it is immoral, and we'll come back to that later. Premise 1 says if the fetus has the potential to be a person, then it has the same moral status as a person. The best defense for this is if X has the potential to be Y, then X has the same moral status of Y, but this is false. We can think of a lot of situations where something has the potential to become something else, but it never does become that thing. And just because it has the potential to become something doesn't mean it should have the same rights as that thing. For example, in November 2016, Hillary Clinton had the potential to become the president, but we didn't automatically give her all the rights and privileges of being the president just because she had the potential. A talented young actor has the potential to become a star, but just because somebody has the potential to become a star, we don't automatically grant them that status. A promising young law student has the potential to become a judge, but we don't give them the judge's robes and have them try cases. I may buy 80% of the lottery tickets, but that doesn't entitle me to a jackpot. A dog embryo has the potential to become a dog, but it lacks the moral status of a puppy or a dog. Those are all from page 177. Okay, the argument from ensoulment says it's immoral to kill any innocent being who has a soul. All human fetuses are both innocent and have a soul. Therefore, it's always immoral to kill a human fetus. And then Russ asks, what does that mean to have a soul? And if we say it's what makes you you and it's not material, is it to have a personality? Because fetuses don't have personalities. To have something each zygote is endowed with by God at conception is one definition, but what evidence is there for such a thing? So questions from Ross. I don't want to read this whole thing out, but this is from page 178. This has to do with debunking the idea of a soul. I encourage you to read this, look at the argument here. I think it's very interesting. The infanticide argument. If infanticide is immoral, so too is abortion. Infanticide is immoral, therefore abortion is immoral. Sority's paradox goes like this. 1 grain of sand cannot make the difference between a heap and something that's not a heap. But note, if you start with a single grain of sand and add one at a time, then by this reasoning, you'll never get a heap of sand. So suppose infanticide is immoral. It seems that an hour should not make a difference in the moral status of a being. If it's wrong to kill a newborn, then it seems it would have been wrong to kill the fetus 1 hour prior to its birth, 2 hours prior to its birth, 3 hours prior to its birth, and so on. So here are some problems with the infanticide argument. Sority's reasoning must go wrong somewhere. A pile of 50 million grains of sand is definitely a heap, and 1 grain of sand is definitely not. So we don't have a good reason to accept premise 1. Some opponents of abortion have sought support for premise 1 by considering the implications of a standard pro-choice argument. The argument from personhood. If a being is not a person, then it lacks any moral rights. Fetuses aren't persons, therefore fetuses lack moral rights. If a being lacks moral rights, then it's morally acceptable to treat it in any way that we like, including killing it. Therefore, it's morally acceptable to kill fetuses. But here's a problem for the argument from personhood. Infants also aren't people, persons. So it seems that if we accept the argument from personhood, we must accept the infanticide argument. But that's a contradiction. So pro-choicers need a different argument for the permissibility of abortion, or they have to say that infanticide is not immoral. All right. Judith Jarvis Thompson is one of the essayists at the end of the chapter, and she has an argument from analogy. So the argument says you're kidnapped in the middle of the night, and you wake up and you are attached through a series of tubes and stuff to one of the best violinists in the nation, a fully grown adult, and you are being used by this adult. All your organs are being attached to that person so that they can stay alive. And you're very upset about this, but the people who have kidnapped you say it's only for 9 months. And so after 9 months, you can have your life back. We just need you to be hooked up to this other person for 9 months. And that doesn't seem like too much of a sacrifice. If it's morally permitted to unplug from the violinist, then it's morally permitted to unplug from one's fetus, that is to terminate your pregnancy. And it seems like, yeah, it is. Like if you're just like kidnapped in the middle of the night and you've lost all your autonomy and now you have to lie in a hospital bed for 9 months, then it seems like you know, you might be sad about it, but it seems like it is morally permitted for you to unplug from that person. So therefore, it's morally permitted to terminate the pregnancy. So what's interesting about this is most pro-life arguments say that you cannot have an abortion because it's a person you'd be killing. And Thompson's argument says, fine, it's a person, but it's still, in some cases, morally permissible to unplug from the violinist. So support for Thompson's premise is, if you bear no moral responsibility for putting others in a life-threatening situation, then you're not morally required to undertake a significant sacrifice to keep them alive. Sustaining another's life would be supererogatory. It would be above and beyond the call of duty. There are limits of Thompson's argument. It can only justify abortion in cases where the woman bears no responsibility for her pregnancy. So this is a pro-choice argument, but it is extremely limited. The protection of interest argument says that if the only way to protect a person's very important, morally legitimate interest is by killing a non-person, then it's permissible to do so. In almost all cases of unwanted pregnancies, the only way to protect a woman's very important, morally legitimate interest is by killing a non-person, the fetus. Therefore, in almost all cases of unwanted pregnancies, it is permissible to kill the fetus. Is premise one true? Is premise one true? Can you think of any counterexamples? If the only way to protect a person's very important, morally legitimate interest is by killing a non-person, then it is permissible to do so. So what do you guys think? Is that true? Here's a simple anti-abortion argument. The fetus is a person with a right to life from the moment of conception. It's always impermissible to directly kill someone with a right to life. Therefore, abortion is always morally impermissible. So Thompson grants one for the sake of argument, but rejects two. Okay, so in the case of the violinist, the right to life is not the right to be given the bare minimum one needs for continued life. The right to life is the right not to be killed unjustly. Unless a woman grants the fetus the right for use of her body, it is not unjust to kill the fetus. So in support of the moral permissibility of abortion, she's also got some other analogies, the case of the burglars and the people seeds. Just because you could have prevented some outcome does not mean that you're obligated to live with that outcome. So this is the case of birth control that has gone wrong. The minimally decent Samaritanism has to do with if somebody asks you to go to great expense and sacrifice to save them, it would be very nice of you to do that, but you are not obligated to do that. And she says that it's often morally permissible, but not always. In the case where you're 8 months pregnant and you just decide, you know what, I'm not into being pregnant anymore, in that case, she does not think that it would be morally permissible to obtain an abortion. Last couple slides are from Don Marquis's essay, Why Abortion is Immoral. So first he asks a very basic question, what makes killing wrong? It could be that the brutality of killing morally corrupts the killer, but he says no, killing corrupts because it's wrong, not vice versa. Could it be that it imposes suffering on the victim's family and friends? Well, yeah, but there's also harm to the victim as well. And so he comes to the answer that killing deprives the victim of a valuable future, a future like ours, or FLO. That's what makes killing wrong. It deprives the victim of a valuable future, a future like ours. So his argument is that it's seriously wrong on its face to deprive a being of a future like ours, and in most instances, abortion deprives a fetus of a future like ours. Therefore, in most instances, abortion is seriously prima facie wrong. Now, there is something on the website where another professor goes through these two arguments in a lot more detail. So if you're interested in one or the other of these, I would definitely encourage you to seek out that resource. But I'm going to cut it off for now. I hope that was useful. I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.